either report in its totality.
My recollection was that the transportation report was done differently, that there was a presentation with the checklist of here are the things that are taking place and where they are in progress. But I think that was actually, am I correct that that was released, or that was presented before the full report was released?
No, the presentation was after the release of the FCMAT report.
And why does it take 7 months to release the report?
Well, part of the question here was exactly what's been brought up, and that's just the transition of leadership, and making sure that we are getting the correct information in the report and going through the editing process. So some of it was on our end because of transition and leadership, and some of it was like being able to get them to come to a board meeting and being able to schedule that with them. Also took some time. So it was I would say it's mostly on us because of the transition and leadership, but it also, there were some components of, getting them scheduled and so forth.
Is it reasonable to ask that in the future we share with the public more the process and the timeline? Because I certainly received questions about where the reports were at, and I think just being really clear about the timeline and where we were and what people could expect, that's my takeaway.
That would be fine. Yes, we can do that. I can't think of any other area that we're going to currently bring to the board and request another FCMAT report. So again, I think we have enough sort of meat on the bone around the transportation report, and now this report to look at what we may want to implement out of these two reports as we move forward.
Well, the final question probably is around what I mentioned earlier, which is when you go out and seek these reports as a district, the biggest issue becomes what we do with that information. And the biggest mistake a district can make is not to have a process to review that report, to consider those recommendations, to involve stakeholders, to involve staff in the process. Otherwise, it's just another piece of paper that cost us 10 figures sitting somewhere. I think this one was $22,000 or something, sitting somewhere, uselessly. So I think the question I was asking is, what does the district intend to do with this report, and how will it be used? So we need a process coming forward that it is not a waste of money and not a divisive tool in our community, which is what has happened by the delay in release of this report.
Now that's been released. Again, Dr. Mills will work with the CAC, and we will bring in other members, and we will, set up a committee to take a look at this, and then move forward on recommendations moving into the future. Again, we didn't see next board meeting coming forward, forward with a list of recommendations. So, and it's going to be the same thing with the transportation report and moving forward with any recommendations that come out of there.
When we discussed, it came out at the last meeting that there had also been a letter on the Clayton Valley Charter,
Yes.
and that had been done last year, but it was publicly released, and I found out about it.
That was done this year. Sorry.
It was requested last year, though?
No, it was requested this year.
You're talking calendar year versus academic.
It was actually requested this academic year.
In October, correct?
Yes, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so you're saying in 2000.
Yes, I'm sorry.
There we go, okay. Sorry. I was thinking in that last school year.
And so the questions remaining from that, and then there is the letter from the county superintendent, Dr. Ovick, and since that's out there, I'd like to ask that the two pieces that were mentioned would be addressed, which were, one, the impact of special ed students from the Clayton Valley Charter, and second, the administrative costs that a 6% decrease in student population. The superintendent, Dr. Ovick's recommendation was that there be a corresponding cut in administrative overhead, and just where we were at with those two, and if you could give some color on those, please.
Mr. Richards could also join in here. With special education, the assumption would be that we've lost that ADA to collect on those students. And so commensurate with that, you'd have to assume then every child in that attendance area went to the Clayton Valley Charter. But by law, the district still is held accountable for meeting those students' special ed needs. So currently, within that attendance area, we actually have, 47 students. So they are serving some. But we have, I think, maybe some of the more high-impact students that are in special program, either NPSs, the county program, and, and so forth. And so those students have remained with the district instead of going with the charter. And so we've lost the revenue, but we've still maintained the cost. Because again, the general fund contribution that was just talked about basically is generated by students in regular education.
So I asked Dave Lindsay, the executive director of Clayton Valley Charter, how many special ed students they had, and his response to me was that they had roughly 140 prior to the charter, and that they had roughly 140, that it was net neutral.
Right, but these 47 students wouldn't have been in their program. See, these are students that have lived in that attendance area and would have been attending last year a county program or an NPS. And so again, though, that offset of those students that are in that attendance area help contribute to the general fund offset for those students. So we are still maintaining the cost of those programs, but we have lost the ADA. So I'm not doubting his number that he's still serving the same number of RSP students on his site or SDC, but these are students with maybe significant needs and are in NPS placements and county programs and so forth. And so they don't contribute to those costs, even though those students live in that attendance area.
And what is the cost of those 47 students then? Is that the...
Well, we don't have the total cost because some of them would be proportional, but if you just look at the students that are in NPS placements or the county programs, it's $852,000. So there are other students that are in some of our other programs where they have one-on-one aids and things like that. So we'd have to go through and create whatever factor. If let's say there's 9 kids in a classroom and they have, so they're 1/9 of that teacher cost plus they have a one-on-one aid. We haven't been able to go through and do that depth of analysis. So we've only at this point done the analysis of the cost around students in the county program and NPS placements. And then Dr. Ovick's notion of the 6% reduction, I think John Gray brought it up last week when he talked about declining enrollment. And when you're declining enrollment and you lose 1 student or you lose 30 students, unfortunately that doesn't commensurate and line up with releasing a teacher or doing anything like that. And so when I look at the HR department that back in 07, 08 had 4 administrators and today it has 2, the district has gone through many of those reductions through the last several years. And so when you look at these departments, and you'd be reducing them by 6%. So I guess the theory would have to be behind that is that all of the people in our district office would be paid the most since we have the most kids in the county. And that's not a factual assumption. If you look position to position, even though we're the largest school district in the county, our people don't always make a comparable salary with people in other districts. And so, if you're going to say that it should be based on your ADA, then you make the assumption that they should be getting paid more, but they're not. And so, when you look at a 6% reduction, it's not easy just to say, again, such as we have four payroll, positions or 4.5. And so what do you take 6%? Again, it's already been brought up by CST that we've already, cut half an hour a day and 2 hours a week off of those positions. So I think part of it is that we've been making reductions at the district all along over the last several years. And so just to make the assumption that, you can just cut 6% of something, again, it's the challenge of declining enrollment. And so that's, I understand the math, but it's not quite that clean and simple.
At this time, we're just gonna take a quick 2-minute stretch break. I'm sorry, won't lengthen it too much longer, but we do have Mr. Lawrence